Today we're in Olney, which some people pronounce Olney, as it's spelt like that. But a nice gentleman in the museum told me last year that locals pronounce it Olney. And here we're starting on the High Street at the United Reformed Church. It's spelt Cowper, but apparently pronounced Cooper. And he was very famous here. But we'll talk about that later. We're walking north on the High Street. It's a very long High Street and some lovely old properties here, all from different stages in history. This one's called the Old Dairy. And over here we have Orchard House, which was the first house to have electricity. It was owned by the chap who owned the shoe factory, which was two shoe factories in town. Hines and Mount, Howleys and Dragese, both in the late 19th century. I think they're at the top end of town, what's left of it. We'll just cross over and have a closer look at that one. Must have been very fancy in its day. Look, it says over the door, Orchard House, and it's got all these nice little roses. Would have been quite something getting electricity. And look, it's still got the railings, which somehow escaped the war effort. Oh, look at this little gem. It was originally built as a sort of a village hall. And then in 1919, it became the Electric Cinema. And there's a little sign there that says the Picture House. How nice that it's still here. I'm not sure what it is, but it's still standing. And there's obviously some work going on. Lovely. And that's actually, if you wanted to find it, it's 79 High Street. An old milestone. And this shop here, still sort of a bakery, used to be the village bakery. And then through here, Cobb's Garden and Surgery. Now it used to be in there, nice as it sounds, there was some tenements. They call them courts in those days, and there was 10 cottages in there, all with gardens out the front. Obviously very squashed in and demolished now to make way for this surgery. It's a really lovely high street. It goes on for a long way. It's very wide and it's got trees either side. Lots of interesting houses. That one there is called the Baker's Dozen. Must have been a bakehouse. And what does this say? Oh yeah, this one next door to it actually says the Old Bakehouse. So you might have watched one of my other rambles on when they didn't just bake bread and cakes and things, but on a Sunday a lot of people didn't have their own, well, a lot of people didn't have their own ovens anyway, so on a Sunday they used to carry up their roast dinners in a tray and they cooked them at the Old Bakehouse for the sum of a penny. Seems like a good idea really. Gosh, there's a lot of traffic going through this town, and over there is the Maltings, and that was Lord's Maltings, where they made beer. And if we look that way, goes right back to the square. We'll be going there when we've finished up this end of town. Two very impressive doors there, and a plaque to tell us 1887. Nice big houses over the other side of the road too. And walking to the north of the high street, there's another wagon, we find this very impressive building, which must have been one of the shoe factories. As I said before, there was two came to the town. There's nothing on it to tell us which one it was. I would imagine it's apartments now, although you can see faintly it says Lodge Plugs, and there's a nice clock in that tower there. The Victorians were really amazing, the buildings that they put up. So proud and, well, majestic really. Nice that it's still standing. So we're at the very north of the high street now. There's a pub there that I'm not sure whether it is still a pub. The Queen Hotel. A lot of the housing in the town, you can see down there and off the high street, was built for the workers at the shoe factory. So that was probably a lunchtime or after work place where they went for a couple of pints. We're going back now towards the village square and the church. This building on the corner here is called Town Farm, and you can see how it must have been a farm because there's all these barns and outbuildings here at the back. Looks like it's currently being refurbished. Very nice. All the old properties in Olney seem to be very well maintained and looked after. Across the road there we have Buck's Lace Industry. It says at the top there. Known as the Lace Factory. Although lace was never produced there, it was built in 1928 and basically it was offices and warehouses. Oh, here we go again, sorry. And there was a huge cottage industry where the ladies of the town made lace products in their homes, and then they brought them here to be sold. It's nice, isn't it? It's a private home now, but still looking absolutely lovely. Here we are, a closer look, and there's a lovely stone tribute there to the lace makers. A little lady making her lace, whatever it was. The Carlton House Club, built in 1885, still functioning today. Very nice. Here's one of the inns that's left, the Two Brewers. Olney was on the staging route. It was an important post. It was a day from London to here, and there used to be 27 inns. I think they've done something to that archway, haven't they, because that's where the horses would go through. Still functioning, but there's certainly not 27 inns in town anymore. The railway came to Olney in 1827. It was the northern end of town, on the outskirts really, and it closed in the 1960s. There's not a lot of trace of it now. This one here is called the Old Honey House, and when I was rambling on around Buckingham I saw another cottage called the Honey House, so it must have some connection with bees, mustn't it? And up there, if you can see it's quite tiny, is one of those fire plaques. that showed they were insured against fire. A nice property next door with an archway, so there must have been stabling at the back. Across the road there we've got a very substantial house, probably the biggest one I've seen in the town. It's called Olney House. So maybe somebody important lived there. On the corner of Spring Lane here we have the cherry tree. The big house there used to be called Westlands, and now it's a restaurant pub. Across the road we've got some nice big stone houses, and there's the market square. Across the road you can see the sign for the pancake race. It's one of the things that the town is most famous for. Obviously it had to be cancelled last year, and I think, yeah, it's cancelled this year as well. And it's also famous as a centre for lace making. And here's another wagon. Oh my goodness, there's 3 of them. And there was a battle here in the Civil War, Olney Bridge. This is the Bull Hotel I'm coaching in, as it tells us. The telltale archway where the horses used to go through. Very old building. Apparently it's been here since about 1600. You can see that from the very low door over there. Nicely restored. It actually says up there, established 1692, but there's been some sort of coaching in on the site since 1600. And another wagon. Oh my word, I've got off that main road now. Managed to cross without getting knocked over. So it must be like living and working in the middle of the M25. Incredibly busy for such a, well, it's not really the direct route to anywhere. But hey, here we are in the church anyway, nice and peaceful in the churchyard. And there was somebody very famous that was the rector of this church, John Newton, who teamed up with a local man, William Cooper, and they wrote one of the most famous hymns in all time, Amazing Grace. I'm not going to sing it, but I'm sure you'll all know it. They were great friends. John Newton lived in the vicarage, and we're going to see the house where Cooper lived. He was, John Newton was an active campaigner to abolish the slave trade as well, and actually William Wilberforce, who was famously known for getting the government to do a turnaround and abolish slavery, he came here and had discussions with John Newton. You can't believe the difference when you get off that main road, all that thundering traffic. And here we are, John Newton, 82 when he died, and his wife predeceased him. Oh, there's a little bit of a strange gargoyle there. Not sure whether I quite like that. This monument is erected by a large number of subscribers who revere the memory and value the works of this eminent servant of God. And the church, an enormous spire, is the Church of St. Peter and St. Paul, and a lot of it was built 14th century. I thought this would be the one. I was looking for the biggest house round about the church, and this is the old vicarage where Reverend John Newton lived, and just a stone's throw away is the house where William Cooper lived. We'll be there in a minute. Well, we thought that was the end, but just walking back to the car, that there has got a little plaque saying the gas house, so that obviously must have been to do with the gas supply. And then we've got the maltings here, and that there has got a plaque on saying the Oast House. So there's still lots of interest on a back road, isn't there? And then a lovely thatched cottage there. A nice little town, well worth a visit. Probably the most famous point of interest in Olney is the Cooper and Newton Museum. It's in the market square, and it was too busy to film there with all the wagons and traffic. It was originally called Orchard Side House, and it was William Cooper's home from 1768 to 1786. He had a great love of gardening. He actually grew pineapples, and he wrote poetry in his summer house. The Reverend John Newton was his great friend, and they wrote lots of hymns together, including the famous Amazing Grace. It's a lovely Georgian townhouse, and the museum is open again now. It's well worth a visit. That's the end of our ramble on around Olney. I've not lived in these parts for very long, so there may be some inaccuracies in here. It's just a walk around the town and things that have taken my interest. So if you've got any comments, anything that you can add to it, or maybe I've got incorrect, please pop them in and look out for my next ones. If you'd like to subscribe, that'd be great. Thank you.